Hello, you're listening to the Nii Lamptey Show. My name's Joey, and I'm joined by Paul.
All right, mate.
And Neil.
Hello.
2 games, no goals.
Lots to talk about.
Yeah, a lot to talk about. No goals, Joe Coles, Moseley Shoals, the Ocean Colour Scene album, Moseley Shoals, that wouldn't getting no airtime this week. Let's kick straight onto moments of the week. What are you saying, Paul?
My moment of the week came in the 67th minute of the game against Rochdale, and we're all used to the reducer tackle being either very late or very physical. But Ian Henderson of Rochdale took it to a whole new level by basically scissor kicking the back of Ryan Kent about 10 metres into our half, which was one of the best reducers I've ever seen. It was unbelievable.
Nothing else this week catch your eye?
No, that was just that moment of utter genius where you were like, really? Why has he done that? And then, sort of, to be fair to him, it worked because Ryan Kent didn't really play much after that. But as reducers go, it was quite cool.
Neil, was there anything that you noticed this week?
I'm still trying to visualise that reducer. So, can you explain a bit more? What happened?
Well, basically, Ryan Kent ran past this guy, and considering, like, literally, we were just in our half. He had a long way to go before Ryan Kenting it up, and basically, this guy just sort of jumped at him and then sort of scissor kicked his back, and then Ryan Kent fell to the floor, and you were just stood there going, "That's just." It's not even like he was anywhere near the ball or going for the ball. He just kicked him in the middle of the back. It was very strange. I wasn't on the highlights, which was just. That, for me, was like, that's the first. I'd build the whole highlights package around that tackle.
Moment of the week. Sounds lovely.
Neil, yours?
Friday afternoon, Joey. God, that was out of the blue, wasn't it?
What a time to be alive.
The fact that it just came out of nowhere. I just got home from work, looked at my phone, and Noel was talking about Joe Cole. This is tight. I didn't know what was happening. And then just over the course of the hour, it just went from, it's going to be Joe Cole to, shit, it's going to be Wes Brown, to then suddenly the tweet going out. And then I was just like in disbelief for a good 10 minutes while you were memeing your ass off with a constant stream of fantastic images. But it still hasn't sunk in, even now, even though he's played for us. It's just, there's something about him being at the club which is insane.
It's very strange. My Friday afternoon, big hello to Charlie Harris. I read his new blog that he's doing called Mowbray Saxophone. He'd done an article on there, like a sort of clickhole thing that was talking about, other players I think that we could sign, etc. And I didn't really get my head around it at first. And then I tweeted him and said, "What's this about?" And he said, it's because people are talking about signing Joe Cole. And so I had a look. That must have been it must have been morning-ish. And so I had a look, and I think I saw one person tweeting about it. And maybe I just missed some of the others. And I was like, right, okay, didn't really think anything of it. Then as the day wore on, I just kind of put it to the back of my mind. As the day wore on, it was just like, oh, by the way, it's actually happening. We are signing Joe Cole. Yeah. You were like, what? No, we're not. This is just Chris Eagles again. Or like, like back in the summer.
Confused, yeah.
Yeah, this is just, just a rumour. And then when it actually happened, like you say, until I actually saw a picture from the club of his face on a tweet, I wasn't willing to believe it. And then, like you say, it was pandemonium on Friday evening, wasn't it?
There was just so many things to say. I didn't know what to write first. I was like, shit, this has happened. And it was just like 200 tweets of just utter delirium. Fantastic.
Yeah, it was just brilliant. We'll talk about his performance against Rochdale as we crack through, but we're going to start with the Blackpool game. So, as I say, it was 2-0 draws.
Joe, your moment of the week. I'm guessing it was...
No, that was Joe Cole. Yeah, I got kind of segged straight through yours as well. That was...
spoiling it again. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's quite all right. So Blackpool, Neil, you were there?
Yeah, as was Paul, but 0-0 was always hard, just because it was all right to watch. It was sort of similar to some of our previous home games in that we struggling to convert chances. But I think what struck me against Blackpool more than the other games was that as the game wore on, we actually struggled to create as well. We sort of evolved into a team that was resorting into the same tactic, which was essentially giving it to Murphy or giving it to Ken and then watching them run down blind alleys. And that's kind of how the game wore on. And I actually went away from that game fairly frustrated, just because obviously I want to win every match, but I just felt like we've been so used to having an attacking team which looks likely to score. It's quite hard to watch the final 25 minutes when we didn't look sort of capable of scoring. Really, we kind of ran out of ideas. But I think probably come back to Murphy and Kent in a second. Maybe just run through the team, I guess, in terms of what happened and who did well. I mean, obviously Reece Charles Cook kept a clean sheet again. He's looking just as solid as he has been. Did anybody see earlier this talk about suddenly now Premiership clubs are after him?
I saw that a couple of people talking about again we're getting linked with Premier League clubs coming in for our players. I would suggest maybe a touch hasty. Yeah,
it's just balmy. I don't think I'd even want to spend money on him yet, just because he's just that new and that raw. And even now, even though we agree he looks good, I wouldn't say there's anything there to say, well, this is definitely going to be a great keeper. We just having a good time of it at the moment. So all a bit sort of impulsive, I'd say. But anyway, that's that.
I'd say he's lucky, and I don't mean this in a disparaging term at all. I think he has been very impressive since he's come in. And I was talking to my nephew who went to the Rochdale game yesterday. I think he's like a dancer in his movements, in the fact that if you watch him, everything he does is very
fluid.
For want of a better term, he's very beautiful to watch. He's very elegant, and it's when he comes to catch the ball, it's very, very unfussy, but very sort of stylish. And then, as I said, I don't want to be disparaging him. I think he's performed particularly well. But Blackpool's main chance on Saturday, when they went through and they had a chance to hit the target, really test him, they put it wide. And one of the things against Rochdale is every time they went through on goal, you thought, oh my God, they managed to just miss the target completely. And it's almost like I haven't seen him make a great save yet, because people just don't seem to hit the target when they're shooting against him. And
I completely agree.
It sounds really bad, but I don't think I've ever seen him make a diving save, because they just either hit the ball straight at him or wide.
I think
he's obviously got something.
Yeah, I think there's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. I think his positioning is noticeably good, and I think that's preventing him having to sort of have the theatrics of a Westwood who banked himself to save everything rather than being proactive. But I completely agree with you, and we'll come on to Rochdale in a second, but there was wayward shooting, to be generous. Yeah, sorry, but yeah, I agree. It's been really, really very, very good for us. I'm in the same camp as you. Don't want it to sound like I'm being down on him. I think he's been excellent, but it's not Westwood-esque, like I say, where he's pulled out 5 world-class saves to keep us in a game that we were absolutely getting battered in. I think we've defended really well as well, haven't we, recently?
Yeah, it's just sort of a different level of excellence, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's him doing the basics really, really well.
Absolutely.
And if we get the racing car out the way now, just the other thing about Rochdale, when he did make a complete balls up of it in the first half, the only time I've really seen him be completely indecision on what he's going to do, Rochdale just put the ball wide, and you get the feeling maybe with people like Birch they would have scored that. When he made that one error, he'd have been punished, and they missed, and it was a relatively easy opportunity which they put wide. But sometimes you just need that bit of luck as well, and he's earned it with everything else he's done.
Yeah. Blackpool then.
Yeah, so we've keeper. Who's next? No, it was a clean sheet. So I think Aaron Martin was a sort of standout in defence. I thought we seem to speak about him most weeks, but I think it's because of sort of there is an improvement there, and I think what's most noticeable is sort of how assured he's looking, because I felt like at the end of last season he was very panicked, very sort of impulsive again. So it was just slam the ball out of play every single time, and some people will argue that's fine. But this season, as the games are wearing on, he's doing more for the team. He's reading the game better. He's looking like a 6'4" defender should be. He should be dominant, and he's winning the ball in the air, and he's actually making some really nice sort of saving tackles as well. So, yeah, another great game. He got a little bit confused with Reader at one point. I can't quite remember the chance, but there was something going on, and it wasn't the best defending by either of them, really. But other than that, I'm really happy with how he's playing at the moment. So long may that continue. Obviously, the big shame to come out of the game was losing Reader. So we still don't know what's going on with that.
Yeah, I was going to say, has anybody seen that yet?
No, it's worrying. I had on the train back today, I was just thinking about it, and I had a horrible moment where I suddenly thought, what about if he's done a really bad injury and now we've just let him go? Because they're also talking about, we've just talking to him. We've got to talk to him first and all this sort of stuff. He's like, what you got to talk to him about? He's injured. Just let us know what's happened. So a little bit worried about what it is. I mean, I hope it, because they just said it was like a hamstring strain, but I think it was a hamstring strain we'd know by now. So not looking forward to tomorrow when we find out what's going on.
That occurred right in front of us, and as soon as he went down, you knew that was trouble.
Yeah, and it's so unnecessary as well. I mean, it's just one of those where you can almost accept it if it's like a tackle where both players are going for the ball and just someone has to go up. But it was just some guy who didn't really have any right to win the ball off him in that situation. Just seemed fairly reckless. The ref was nowhere to be seen, and I hate that because now we lose a real key player for God knows how long, and it means we've got to sort of adjust. That back four was looking really quite sturdy. Obviously, Stokes continues to feel at home at left back. You'll probably talk more about him in the Rochdale game. Sounds like he had a good one then, so we won't talk too much about him now. But my man of the match was Fleck. Mowbray calls him out oiling with the pitch, and sort of, there's no doubt that he was doing everything he could in that game to sort of craft the chances from the position on the pitch where he can craft chances. I mean, some people are saying he needs to get further forward still, and he needs to, be the person to create that final pass. But at the team at the moment, his role is to give the ball to the players in the threatening areas and let them sort of, create the final chance. And he did that consistently throughout the match. He looked class above as far as I could see, and it was just John Fleck having another great game. And final, just to jump into strikers before I go back, Kent and Murphy. I don't think it was Marc-Antoine Fortunet's best game, and I don't actually think his style helped us at all on Saturday. I mean, we weren't as sort of quick and incisive as we usually are at home. We were pretty lethargic in that play. And in the second half, all I really wanted was some sort of boost of pace or sort of increase of tempo. Something just to knock the players into life. And he was doing his job because he was getting the ball and he was holding it up. But in that game, I didn't want someone holding it up. I wanted someone to sort of immediately engage the other players and, be a wall, knock off to another player and help increase the tempo of the match. And every time the ball was going to him, it was just with him for what seemed like an eternity. And it wasn't helping what was already starting to look like quite a stagnant attack. So wasn't too keen on his performance, which is a shame because the game beforehand, he was really sort of impactful. He looked like he was going to be a good player for us, and he probably will still be a good player for us, but that wasn't sort of the player we needed on Saturday, I would say. But after the game, most talk seemed to be on the two wingers, who were the onus was on them to be the creative players, and they just weren't really firing. The pattern evolved over the course of the match, and it became clear by the end of it. It was sort of, we were just giving the ball to either Murphy or Kent. They were both trying to influence the match. They'll get the ball, run at the player, but it was the decisions. And not only were they sort of the wrong decisions, but they were just late decisions. They were kind of running with it for too long, going down the blind alley, and it was just then not thinking about what to do before it was too late. And it was just, that's what frustrated me, because when things aren't working, you kind of want to adjust it and try something else. And we weren't. We were just doing the same thing. We were giving it to Murphy, who his fullback, by the end of it, one of the first time ever, seemed to have the measure of him, and he was just sending him down towards the byline, and it was most of the time running out. And Kent was doing what Kent does. I mean, he's kind of mercurial. It's just he'll get the ball, he'll run with it, he'll take a few players on, it will look good. But Mowbray said it himself, there's something not quite there at the final stage, and by not quite there, I mean not quite there. There's nothing there at the moment. There's no pass. There's no real shot or anything. So I don't know. Noel, did you have any thoughts on it? I know you sort of mentioned a few things after the match on Kent.
I feel really sorry for Lemares, who seems to have been completely dispensed with, and seems to have just fallen off the face of the earth just so he can play Ryan Kent, who I completely agree with. There's no end product at all. And on Saturday, it was just getting pathetic when I saw two guys yesterday, and I asked them both what they thought of Kent, and one was really positive. So, he's brilliant. He can take players on, but his final touches isn't quite good enough. And someone else went, I don't care how many people he beats because his final touch isn't there at all. And that's sort of how I feel about him. It's just pure stats. And I know we sort of talk about this a lot, and it doesn't really matter in a way. But I think Murphy's had 16 shots. He's created 2 or 3 goals, and I've lost my piece of paper. And he's
scored one, yeah.
Yeah, and he's scored, and he's had impact on the game. And you look at Kent. Kent hasn't scored. I think he's had 5 shots, and he hasn't assisted a goal. And you're just like, well, it's already well. And we discussed this. I don't know if we discussed it on the pod, but me and Joey discussed it quite early on when we watched Kent. In his first couple of games, he was trying to play passes through, and he'd have a large area to try and hit. It didn't have to be an inch perfect. When you've got someone like Armstrong up front, your pass doesn't have to be perfect. Your pass just has to be in the right area.
I think we described it as the window of opportunity, didn't we?
Yeah, it's like sometimes it's like a 10-metre square. If you hit the ball in that 10-metre square, Armstrong will get there first, and he's through one-on-one. So it's not even like it's you don't have to be pinpoint. And he was trying to be too pinpoint. And you sort of got a bit frustrated with him, but you could sort of go, okay, he's trying to be too intricate, but it's not quite working for him. On Saturday, my biggest issue was the fact he wasn't even trying to do those passes. He was basically just running until he was tackled. And I think one of the things, got to give credit to, I thought Blackpool played really well. And I thought they really limited the space, and they basically just as you say, they basically went, okay, Murphy doesn't really have much of a cross, so we'll push him out wide. Once he's got into a certain place, we'll just keep him out wide, so he can't tuck in, which is what he wants to do. With Kent, it was a case of, you can beat as many players as you want. We're just going to put another player in front of you. And because he doesn't try to do the basics, he just tries to show off, he just kept losing the ball. And what you were saying about Mark, after he'd been the 12th man, it was just a case of, well, we're not getting anything out of you today. And then Mobley made like 2 substitutions to take him off. It was like, what was bringing Lemares on for Winslow all about? And then 5 minutes later, taking him off and then taking Kent off and bringing Morris on to play centre midfield and then move Lemares out wide right. It was just, and then because he had made that, and I'm going to go with it, that stupid substitution to take Kent off. When Raider Johnson went off and we had to bring Phillips on, you were like, well, what we really need now is someone other, even Tudguy or someone else, because Fortuné, what they'd done with Fortuné is they'd basically said, you've got nothing about you apart from they're going to play the ball into you and then you're going to pass it off. So in the second half, they had one person stood behind him and one person stood in front of him, and they just kept taking the ball off him because he didn't have anything else. And you were like, well, at least if you bring Tudguy on, there's a bit more mobility there. He's going to be slightly different. And it was just, because he had made this double substitution, he had limited what substitution he could then do. And then he got an injury, so he couldn't make that substitution anyway. And then the game frittered out.
I just had a couple of points on that. I think on Kent, I agree with everything. I think we've kind of come to a sort of a conclusion there that he does need to work on that final ball. One thing, it's got to be a caveat. You know, he's 18. I wouldn't want the whole pod just to be okay, us having a go at him. I think like he's a good player. He needs to work on that final product, but there's clearly some level of talent there. So we just need to hope that he can learn, because that's what he needs to be doing at this age. Really, when he's playing football, he needs to learn. And those first games where the passes weren't coming off, he shouldn't have seen that as okay, well, these passes aren't coming off, so I've got to do it all myself. Keep trying the passes. That's the way to get. And at the moment, he's gone the other way. He's gone too far, where he's thinking, well, the passes aren't working, so I'm just going to try and do the lot myself. And that's even worse for the team. And the other thing was around Lemares. again, yeah, I completely agree. I think he needs to. He hasn't done much to warrant being taken out of the team. The only thing I can think of really is sort of a pace thing, and it's kind of the balance of the team. So Kent and Murphy give you that sort of pace on both wings. Lemires doesn't strike me as a sort of pacey sort of player, but I think with Cole now around, there's the potential for that sort of Lemires, Maddison kind of link up again, which works so well, where it's not pace per se, it's more sort of speed of play and quick passes, intricate passes, and I think those two together could link well. And then you've got a different dynamic. It's still a useful one, but it's almost like Mowbray looks at it and think, well, if you've got the two wingers and they've got pace, then we've got like a two-pronged attack almost. Lemires doesn't quite offer you the same on the right-hand side, so that would be my take on why maybe he's not playing at the moment. But I kind of expect to see him more in the team now.
Neil, a brief thing on Kent. I would completely agree with you about the we're not, again, a little bit like with Reece Charles Cook. Actually, he's probably playing better for us this season than most players, full stop, played for us last season. So it's all relative. So whilst it might sound like criticism, I think it's more sort of, it's a lot more positive than that. What I will say, and I don't mean this to be overly contentious, but that when he arrived, I was under the impression of him being billed as sort of one of Liverpool's very hottest talents of that age group. Does it just mean that that age group is wayfish, and that the physical demands of League One are so wildly different to the Premier League, or the under-21 league, or like me, did you maybe expect that he might be a little bit better than this?
He can probably just get away with running at players, and you've seen the YouTube videos, haven't you? It is just him running past players who are about the same sort of height as him. And I think your sort of first point of around sort of size and physicality, and he is hitting almost a brick wall. That initial burst of pace at his age is always going to be too good to beat a lot of these sort of sluggish League One defenders. But it's when he comes up against that final wall of defenders where he needs more than just, a sleight of foot. He needs, to be able to muscle his way past them, that he's kind of hitting that brick wall and it's not really going for him.
Or dare I say it, maybe a little bit more nous. And maybe that's experience, maybe that's built up. But I agree with you. I think the crucial element that's missing, and Paul touched on it earlier, is end product in whatever sense that you want to look at it in. So far he's not been a goal threat, especially in my eyes. He has not had the physicality to make that final telling contribution to burst through. But then equally, his passing has left somewhat to be desired, I would say. Like I say, I can see there's a spark of something very good there. But I'll be completely honest, without wanting to sound too harsh, but I did expect him to be better than this.
And actually, just say what I was just saying there about he hits a brick wall. Actually, he probably should be passing before he hits that brick wall.
Yeah.
There's me saying I don't want him to run past. He's taking it a bit too far. Maybe get rid of the ball before you hit the 6'5" defender.
But I get that an 18-year-old who's only ever played sort of under 21-ish style games for Liverpool would take time to adapt to League One. That's absolutely fine. But that when I think about I guess the idea was that he would be Maddison. He'd come in and sort of fill, because you bear in mind that Maddison's probably got a similar experience range, arguably maybe a worse one, because he would be playing at a lower standard of youth football, but ultimately unperturbed by either the physical aspect of the game and was able to make a more telling contribution in the final third. So it is interesting. I guess ultimately what I'm saying is James Maddison is better than all of Liverpool's youth players.
End of podcast.
Well, I don't think it's a physicality thing at all. I don't think it's not like he's bullied off the ball. It's not like he's coming up against stronger players and he can't hack it physically. I think physically is one of the places where he's a bit diver. He's a bit of a diver for my liking. Like yesterday, he just stopped at one point and he just turned to the referee and it's like, well, it was a foul, but you can't just stop because there'll be other games where you'll stop and the girl will just take the ball away. Where my issue is, it's that final bit where you get to that ball of you've now got to make it. Your decision making at this point is you either release it or you try and do too much. And there was a big, I don't know if we're going to go on to the Rochdale game at this moment in time. There was a big thing yesterday where me and Joey sort of disagreed. And for me, my big issue at the moment, and it's almost, remember when we signed Reece Brown? Reece Brown seemed to try and do something clever every time he got the ball. It was almost like, just look, I've come from Man United. Look how good I am. And it was a case of, that's fine, but you're playing shit. I'd like you to do the basics well, and we'll build from the basics. And it seems to go to Kent, and it's like, all I want you to do now is pass the ball back to Aaron Phillips, who's in 10 metres of space. Why are you trying to skin that man when there's no space to go? Oh, you've lost it again. Oh, okay. And the ball went to him again. It's like, okay, I just want you to pass the ball simply. Oh, you've tried to do that through your... Oh, okay, you've lost it. And it's just do the basics well. I mean, yesterday, Bryn Morris for the first half an hour was appalling. Like, unbelievably appalling. After that point, he started to just do the basics where the ball was passed to him and he just passed it to a teammate 5 yards. And from that moment on, everything he did, where he just did the basics, he was really good, really solid, won his tackles, passed the ball well. When he tried to do something fancy and tried a 30-yard left-footed chip pass, it went horrendously wrong. And it was just like, no, brilliant, just do the basics. Just calm down, pass the ball simply, and you're really helping the team. By trying to think you're Zinedine Zidane, you're giving the ball away. And it's a bit like that with Kent. Just when you get the ball, just cross it. Don't skin the man 18 times. Just cross it. And we'll see what happens at that point. And I would take him out the firing line, not because I don't think... there is something there. That's what people keep telling me, and I'm prepared to believe there is something there. I just don't think at this moment in time, you look at, I think we've scored 1 goal in the last 4 games. I think it's time to try other people because he isn't playing particularly well and he isn't creating chances. And maybe it's time to look at other people and see if they'll give us more.
There is also the Ryan Ulsoppification of the situation, isn't there? Where at least, Lemiris is ours and is 21 and in need of regular football. It seems a shame to that a time where I don't feel like, and you could point. This isn't purely at Kent. I guess there's a tactical argument to be had about how you would switch that front 4 around. But it is a shame to me to see Lemiris marginalised in the way that he has, and I don't think it's anything particularly sinister. I just think we've got a lot of options, haven't we? But I would like to see him come back in some sense. But I also think there's probably for a different week when we haven't got so much to talk about, a sort of a debate to be had about how best to operate that front 4, because I'm not convinced in its current state it's the best use of it. I think you could argue, in fact, that it's the 4 best individuals that are playing the most, whereas I'm not convinced that they necessarily lock in together. Neil, have you got any final thoughts on Blackpool?
No, I think we spoke about it to death. We're talking about these high standards, and that's good. I mean, like you said, last year we would probably be raving about ranking at this point. We're not anymore. We're not raving. We're just saying, look, you've got to do better, and that's good.
Absolutely. Paul, you were at Rochdale last night.
Indeed, I was.
You talked about it a little bit, but you're going to do a little proper thing for us right after this, aren't you?
Yes.
Right, Rochdale then. Paul, right, give it to us straight.
Well, the first thing that has to be discussed about Rochdale is I told the Everton fan at work that we had signed Joe Cole, and he went, a bit past it, isn't he? What? And you're like, well, the reason that Joe Cole holds a special place in most Cole fans' hearts is the fact that we saw him when he was 17 tear our youth team apart. And I think it was almost... I was trying to explain it to people. It's a bit like, when you hear a band for the first time and you sort of hear their first single and you think, I like them, they're going to be big. And when they're sort of filling stadiums, you go, I told you. Or you see an actor in something and you go, that guy's a bit special. And then he turns into sort of Benedict Cumberbatch or something. You're like, yeah, I saw him first in Star for 10, and I knew that guy was going to be a genius. It was a bit like that with Joe Cole. With
Paul Knowles' pop cultural digs just thrown in there.
But it is, isn't it? It's like we all saw it. We all saw this.
With Cumberbatch or Cole?
Pardon?
With Cumberbatch or Cole?
Both. We all saw Joe Cole at the age of 17, and we thought, this guy's going to rule the world. This guy is going to be special. And then I've been trying to think of an analogy ever since. My only analogy is it's a bit like Forrest Gump and Jenny, where he fancies her from about the age of 10, and then he finally gets her when she's a bit drug-addled and a bit past it. And we've finally got Joe Cole when he's probably a bit over the hill and a bit past it. But we're so excited to have Joe Cole that all we can imagine is this 17-year-old who's going to get the ball and destroy League One defences.
And I don't think he's totally past it as well.
Yeah, I don't think he's totally.
I think 33 is a better age than I. If you'd said to me, last year or something, Joe Cole will eventually play for Coventry, I have visions of Joe Cole playing for Coventry at the age of 45. Just like falling onto the pitch and giving them a game or something like that.
But you've also got, sorry Neil, I think the reason you've got to put it in context is the fact that, he's only 33. The guy was basically a first team at the age of 17, 18. True, he's been playing a lot of football since the age of, for 15 years, he's basically been a first teamer. And you put that, there aren't that many players who can survive for 15 years at the very, and people are talking about Rooney now, and he's only 30. But there again, Rooney's been playing first team football for 14 years. There is a lot, Joe Cole's played a lot of football in his career, and he is on, there's no denying it, he's on the downward trajectory. But I'm glad we've got Joe Cole, but I think we have to put into the fact that we've got a 33-year-old Joe Cole. And
strictly speaking, he's 34 on the 7th of November, I think. So he's almost a 34-year-old Joe Cole.
Yeah, and, I took my nephew to the football yesterday. He was 17. I've wanted us to sign Joe Cole since my nephew was 1. That does start to put things in context. It's like, this is a guy we've known about for so long. We've wanted. And he brought him in. He started him in the number 10 role. He moved Armstrong to wide right, which we'll discuss in a minute, because me and Joey, I think, have conflicting views on this. And he brought Jim O'Brien back in on the left. So basically, he remoulded the entire front four, who I think we all agreed didn't have particularly good games against Blackpool. He brought in, as I said, Bryn Morris for the suspended Fleck. And Aaron Phillips came in with Ricketts moving to centre-half for Raider Johnson. So there were quite a lot of changes in the team. And to be honest, I thought Rochdale settled before we did. I thought in the first half, both teams had chances, but I thought there was definitely a 15-minute period where Rochdale were by far the better team. We couldn't quite break out in the way that we have done in recent times. I know we've discussed quite a lot in the past when we discussed with Joey the difference between having Reece Cook in goal and the fact he kicks it long compared to when Birch was there. And it dawned on me yesterday, the reason Birch didn't kick it long against Bury was the fact that we had midgets up front. Obviously, when you've got Fortune up front, you've got that ability to go a bit more direct. He doesn't win anything in the air, but at least you've got that ability to go a bit more direct. And both teams had chances. Both teams, like you hear, I've listened to read what both managers said, and both managers basically said, we're a bit disappointed. We had the chances to win that game. Both did. Both teams, I said earlier, Rochdale had 3 or 4 clear-cut chances which they just couldn't hit the target with. And there was another one where Reece Charles Cook did really well to come out and close the space and was a really good save. For us, Armstrong went through one-on-one. It's not on the short highlights, it's probably on the long highlights.
Yeah, it is,
He didn't. The goalkeeper was on the edge of the area. It was like you could go round him, you could do this, and he basically hit it a bit softly at him. Joe Cole had his 2 chances. One he scuffed wide with his left foot. One he tried to curl in with his right. Yeah, both from outside the area. You the guy in front of me just turned around and goes, I saw Joe Cole score. And it's like, when he went through, every Cole fan saw him right back in the net. You weren't the only one who didn't need to look to know that he was going to score. Unfortunately, it went wide. And I think Fortune had one of his forays into their penalty area and had a shot, but I could be wrong. It's a bit sketchy.
He did. I watched this just before we started recording. It looked like he didn't even know what the concept of scoring a goal was, let alone thought about like hitting it goalwards or anything. He looks like a man who's not familiar with the idea of goals, does he?
Well, basically, he's made 8 appearances for us, which surprised me. Guess how many shots?
I mean, it's single figures, undoubtedly.
3.
3.
One of those was the penalty.
Yeah, that probably tells you a lot about the man. But yeah, go on.
So I mean, yesterday I didn't think. I thought Fortuna was pretty crap yesterday. I didn't think he was particularly good on Saturday. I thought he was pretty crap yesterday as well. But it's all about the thing with Fortuna is he'll only ever be as good as the players around him, because he's only ever going to do one thing, and that's they're going to play the ball into him, and he's then going to either turn and pass it or with his back to goal pass it. I think if you want anything more than him than that, he's not that man. And the problem is when you've got no one close to him to take the ball off him, he's going to lose the ball a lot. And the most attempted pass in the entire 90 minutes was Morris to Fortuna. And I think they only completed it twice, if that many.
Right. And
you just watch it and you go, Morris, just stop trying that pass. It isn't working for you. And it was like, Fortuna, can you just move a little bit towards the ball instead of waiting for it? Because every time you wait for it, the Rochdale player runs around you and gets it.
Oh, he is a dead weight, isn't he, Fortuna? There is absolutely no attempt to come and find the ball. It is purely, as soon as the person releases it, he just stands and watches it, doesn't he?
And this is... I think Mowbray's had a really good start to the season. I've got very few complaints with what Mowbray's doing, but at the end of the day, we are only attacking with 4 players. And when one of those 4 players is Fortuna, at times you're only attacking with 3 players. 3 players against quite a good Rochdale team does not create that many decent chances. And we only had 3 or 4 really good chances. I know that sounds quite a lot, but if you add that to the 1 or 2 we had against Blackpool, and as I said, you look recent games where we only got the own goal by Richard Wood. I know we're keeping clean sheets, but we're really not creating that many chances. I don't know what you thought, Joe, but it's not clicking up front at the moment, is it?
How much of it do you think is a coincidence, and how much of it do you think is attributed to Fortuna coming in at the same time? And I don't want to sound like, I know we keep saying that we're not digging on certain players. I think there's a discussion to be had about how good Fortuna has been. I just think that dynamically, and I know I think I banged on about this at the Chesterfield game, and then we scored immediately afterwards. But I keep thinking of the Millwall game and just the sheer pace of those attacks, and I can't help but look at Fortuna and think you inhibit that. And I guess I know it's because it's a different style of playing, but that I'm not convinced that our best is to favour the option with Fortuna, because I think he's had good games and bad games, and has been all right, pretty good, but I'm just not sure whether he stifles us a little bit. I don't know whether having Joe Cole come in for him and try and spring 3 players ahead of him, be them Armstrong, Kent or Murphy, gives the defence too much to think about in terms of where they're marking and where the positionings that they're taking up is. Actually, Fortuna coming in to try and batter in Ram, well, it's not really working for me. And part of that, I think somebody alluded to it earlier, that I don't think that Murphy or Kent or whoever the other people either side of him are getting close enough to him for him to lay it off to him properly. And specifically, I don't think they're making the runs where they're aiming to go past him at a time where he can release it to their feet, or literally just in front of them. But unless we either work out how that attack fits together, or, and this is arguably what I would do, take him out, especially for certain games. It didn't, like say for Blackpool, doesn't seem like they had. Did they have 2 terrifying monsters at centre half that we desperately needed to counteract?
No, well, it was a decent enough battle, but like you say, you hit the nail on the head there. It can work. It has worked, but it will only work for certain games. And I don't think we're going to blaze everybody in the league by playing Marc-Antoine Fortuné up front. It'll work when it's necessary, and it worked well when he was sort of counteracting Shrewsbury's defence. Was it Granderson? But like you say, the idea actually, it came to me when you were saying like Joe Cole's trying to spring 3 other attacking players around him. That law of averages, in my mind, feels like that's going to be a far more potent option than if you've just got Fortuné up front, who will occasionally batter and ram his way through and do something with it. But it's just kind of, there's always going to be a horses for courses element, but at the same time, you've kind of got to know what is your most potent formation.
Yeah.
And I just don't feel like that's sort of job one is finding that and going with that, if you're not too sure. And I just don't feel like, obviously it's a safe bet, but I don't think it's the best bet.
Agreed. Yeah, Paul, pick it up from there.
Well, basically, I think you got to remember one of the reasons we wanted someone like Fortuné in the side was when we went to some of the away games we've been to earlier this season. We needed someone who could hold the ball up, and we wanted someone who had that physical presence because we felt when Armstrong was up front on his own, he wasn't able to get on the ball, especially after Maddison's injury, where we didn't feel like we had someone in the number 10 role who could hold the ball up and use the ball in a way to allow us to counter-attack. I agree then, if you are going to play with a very defensively minded 6, you need your 4 to be very fast and dynamic. And when we were, Armstrong had 2 good chances. When Murphy came on, he had a couple of chances. When we started going a bit more, and when I say direct, I don't mean long ball, I just mean that's what I like about Murphy. I like the fact that Murphy he gets his head down and he knows where he wants to end up, and it's around the penalty area. I like Armstrong; it's the same thing. He's got an aim, and the aim is to score, and it's to make those runs. When the ball's going to Fortuné, and unless the ball's literally to Fortuné, he's not gonna win the ball. If it's 2 foot to the side of him, you are going to lose possession. So he's the type of player we need if he is playing really, really well. When he's playing, or when he's as easy to play against as he was yesterday, for me, it'd be a case of I'd just take Fortuné out because he wasn't holding the ball up. He wasn't using his strength. He wasn't using his height. He was basically just there. And you think, I like Armstrong through the middle. There were a couple of times when Joe Cole picked the ball up and you think, I'd like Armstrong to be 5 yards away from him instead of 25 yards away from him. Because I think that's what Joe Cole wants. He wants that person to pass it to. He doesn't want to have to pass the ball behind him to Fortuné. He wants to pass the ball forward to someone who's quick. And the whole attacking dynamic, for me, didn't work. Whether or not that's Fortuné, I'd probably go with a little bit of yes, especially on the last 2 performances where the style of football we're trying to play, we're not trying to batter ram someone down. We're trying to play a bit more intricately than that. You need to, unless he's playing really, really well, where every one of his passes works and every one of his first touches is good, then you can have him. When he's playing like he has the last 2 games where you're not convinced that his first touch is good enough, then I think he's more of a hindrance than a help. And to be honest, I thought yesterday a draw was a fair result. I thought Rochdale missed their chances. It could have just as easily been 2-2. I think a draw was a fair result. They just come out of it just feeling a bit frustrated. And I know it's a good result, and I know we're still 4th, and I know that it's still building momentum, and we kept another clean sheet, which was a bit fortuitous at times, but also I think individually I thought Stokes had a really good game. I think you look at the players we've got, Stokes is the only one who's really sort of, apart from him and Martin are your 2 unflashy players. They're very solid. They're very dependable. Ricketts, I thought some people gave Ricketts man of the match. I didn't think he was as good as Martin, but I thought, and I know it's all a bit of hindsight. Their number 9 was causing great problems, and he was beginning to cause a lot of problems. But you could see he was tiring when he went off. When they replaced him, if they'd replaced him with someone similar to the number 9, you would have the last 20 minutes could have been quite worrisome because I thought they were beginning to get the beating of Ricketts. But luckily they brought on someone who was just quite, wasn't as good. Who would have thought that Rochdale wouldn't have a second good striker on the
Well,
bench.
as another striker as good as Calvin Andrew, who is, as far as I can tell, notorious for having one of the worst goal-scoring records in all of League One, or potentially even the Football League. But I know what you mean, though. He drags a club round with him, doesn't he, while he's on the pitch? He is a nightmare to play against.
And I thought he links well with them more. He was basically doing what we wanted Fortuna to do, but he was doing it a lot better. And I thought he was allowing their flair players to get a lot more possession in dangerous areas. And from what I understand, their main striker was injured yesterday, wasn't he?
Vincenti?
Yeah. So it would have been interesting because what they did in the League Cup game is they bought David, whatever he's just said his name was. Donaldson?
Peter Vincenti?
No. Who was the other guy?
Calvin Andrew.
Yeah, Calvin Andrew.
Yeah.
They brought him on, didn't they, in the League Cup tie?
They did, yeah.
With 20 minutes to go, and he tore Ricketts a new one in those 20 minutes. And it was a bit. If they'd have had someone like that to bring on, it would have been a very interesting game, and you would have, we could have come away without the draw. I know it's all of it could have, would have, should have, but I thought he was leading the line in a way that I wish Fortuna was. He was just a big battering ram who was throwing himself around, moving around. When they played the ball into his chest, it was sticking, and they had more of a focal point. I didn't think we had that. Now, I suppose the main talking point was Joe Cole. I thought, and I think this is going to sound really odd, and I think it's something which will be interesting to see over the next couple of weeks. My biggest problem I think I have with Joe Cole is I think we might try and overuse him. I don't want Joe Cole in our half passing the ball.
Yeah.
Joe Cole needs to be in the middle to final third dictating play. And when he's coming back, and we had a free kick and he sort of ran, Morris passing the ball, and then sort of Joe Cole passed it back, and you were like, you wouldn't have done that to anyone else. You'd have told him to piss off. Just because it's Joe Cole doesn't mean that suddenly that pass is any more useless than it was if it had been to anyone else. You can't just keep passing him the ball because he's Joe Cole. We need to make sure we utilise him in the right areas. Otherwise,
and the return of John
be
Fleck
in the same.
that.
Yeah, and it also goes back to when we have Gary McAllister in his second spell, and it was like we had to pass the ball to Gary McAllister regardless of who was on the ball or where they were on the pitch. And you were like, well, maybe this time you don't need to use Gary McAllister. Maybe this time you could just run past him. And it was a bit like that. It was like, the pass to Joe Cole isn't the right pass now. Maybe wait a minute and then pass it to him in a couple of moves time. And I think we need to, I agree. Maybe when Fleck comes in, I think we need to make sure that with his own enthusiasm to be involved, that Joe Cole doesn't come back too much. And I think also because we've got Joe Cole, we don't use him in a way which hinders the rest of the side. But saying that, the guy's got a couple of touches of class, and it would have been awesome if he'd have.
I do agree with you, but there is an element of me that wonders whether the players have got a similar mindset to us, but the difference for them is that they've got the ability to alter things on the pitch, and so what they're doing is just like, God, I can't believe I get to see Joe Cole live in the flesh. I'm going to give him the ball to see what he does with it.
It's like when you sort of mate yourself on FIFA and just constantly keep passing the ball to yourself, like, I'm going to get a hat-trick, and just run around the whole place.
Yeah.
You can't help it, can you? You just want to give it to him because you think he can do some magic.
But on a serious note, I agree with you. I think they've got to see him as a peer, haven't they? He's in the team on merit, and I know that sounds like it's detrimental, but he's there because that's the level that he's at now, and they shouldn't look up to him as some sort of deity. They should be using him as a teammate. I also think that, to your point, Paul, I agree. I would be inclined to put a shackle on one of his ankles and a chain that's got a sort of 5-yard radius and just nail it to the D of their box, because he did run himself out a little bit too soon yesterday, and I know that's because he hasn't played much football. But I have no interest in seeing him anywhere other than the edge of their box. It just doesn't need to happen, does it?
No, and I said I am really glad we signed him. I think just players of that ilk don't play at this level anymore. It's just you don't see players of that quality. But I think we need to make sure he's a benefit to the team. instead of. And the other thing is, it ranks up the whole expectation of everything now, doesn't it? It's like we've got Joe Cole in. We need to be, automatic promotion because we've got Joe Cole. We need to, And I know it's great, but I think we have to sort of temper expectation as well. It's sort of we're still a team that's either got really talented young kids or players who are towards the end of their career. It's just, I do wish we had a number 9 who was 26, 27 instead of having an 18-year-old or a 33-year-old. And I know it's the level we're at. It's just the last couple of games, you get the feeling with a better main striker, we would have won both those games. And we'd now be sat top of the table with a game in hand. And it's just, it's that, isn't it? It's that little difference. The clean sheets are great, but it's that 1 goal in 4, 1 goal in 5 that's, and I said Armstrong's had 20 shots. Jacob Murphy's had 16. After that, the next highest shots on target is John Fleck with 6. Wow.
Okay.
So it is like those, Murphy's only scored one of his 16 shots on target. So, while we have got lots of different goal scorers, if you stop Armstrong from scoring, I said Kent doesn't like a scorer. I like Murphy more than like Kent, but I could see why people would question that because Murphy seems to have the same issue with end product. It's just we need to. I don't feel like we worked the keepers enough over the last 2 games, and I think for me, I thought both were draws for fair results, and it's that little bit we're lacking. We're lacking that extra, either bit of intelligence in the final third, or just that man who's just got the know-how how to win games at this level.
That's what's awesome about the conversation that we're having, and I keep saying it, but we're sat here 4th in the league, 5 clean sheets in a row, talking about how we can make ourselves even better, and that is good. That is how you win stuff. That is how you actually achieve. Because in previous years we've got to points where we feel like we've reached a pinnacle, and look at the table and we're 8th, and we're like, oh, this is amazing, and then think from here is a bonus. Fuck off! It's not a bonus. Bonus is actually doing something, and so it's great. And I want to make the team even better, and actually discussing it. Actually, I know we're not actually actively going to be able to do anything, but at least it's creating a sort of culture around the place where, okay, we'll say it's great, but we haven't scored enough goals in those 5 games, so let's find ways of scoring more goals and actually getting ourselves the position where I think we all look at this team and the squad now, and we recognise that there's no reason we shouldn't be top 2 or we shouldn't be challenging for top 2. So let's actually implement it. Let's go for it.
I always find it really disconcerting hearing you swear.
Yeah, it's odd. Yeah. Bleep it. When I say it, I really mean it.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's the passion seeping out of you. Yeah.
But I do agree with it. We've all been there. We can all sort of. We've been. It's just. I think. Jim Brown's came out in his latest article saying this is our best start for a season since sort of 1964, and it's like, yeah, that's because we've been shit mostly since 1964. This is the first time.
Not always.
No, to be fair, we were good in 1967, 68, that's when we won promotion.
Okay, I stand corrected.
But it's like you started going, of all the teams, and not just the team we've got at the moment, but obviously the level we're playing at as well. We've never had a better chance in my lifetime to win a division.
Yep, agree.
Because this team is as good, if not better, than most teams at this level. So, we're never going to win the Prem unless something miracle happens. But we should be able to win this division, and we should be able to win this division at a canter.
I think a fine sentiment there to end the sort of Rochdale chat on. We'll have a little bit of this, and then we'll do some Swindon preview. Right, Swindon, we were talking about this last night. I think a weird thing has happened in the last week or so, where when maybe 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, we would have looked at Blackpool at home and then Rochdale away, Swindon away, as being an absolute stick-on. I mean, against Chesterfield, we were talking about possibly destroying Blackpool. I think they were bottom at the time, or second bottom, in really poor form. And Rochdale you'd expect to be very difficult, and Swindon you'd expect to be very difficult. But in the space of that time, Rochdale, quite surprised to see, have only won 1 of their last 6. Blackpool won 3 in a row. And Swindon, who we face on Saturday, have lost 5 of their last 6 games and have drawn only 1. So it's a topsy-turvy league, all told, this season. But Swindon, we couldn't be facing them at a better time by the looks of it.
Unless they get a new manager in.
I don't think they will. There was a 5-man shortlist was the last thing that I heard as of yesterday, I think it was. And I think it would be, if they did hire someone in time for the game, and I know that there's still an element of bounce in there, I think it would be it would be like Joe Cole sat in the stands at Blackpool. I don't think there'd be much impact.
Happy with that?
Yeah, so that feels like it's good. They're 23rd overall at the moment. They've won 3 and lost 8 of their 14 games. I had a look on their forum called The Town End, which is the usual ragbag of lunatics and people for who the night brings only pain. But amongst the sort of the mad ranting and ramblings, they still seemingly have some level of faith in Power. But a couple have pointed to the fact that there's been some dismantling of what was a reasonable team. It almost sounds a little bit like the sort of Borussia Dortmund thing, where they've increasingly been taken apart, but that this is the sort of the straw that broke the camel's back, where eventually they just weren't able to rebuild sufficiently. Mark Cooper's gone. Lee Power, in theory, is going to be in charge. He, for anyone that doesn't know, is, for tax reasons, domiciled elsewhere than in this country, meaning that he can only be in this country for 93 days a year, which I imagine means that he's managing via Skype during the week. It's a ludicrous situation to be in. But like you say, I think probably one that will be resolved fairly quickly, albeit not quick enough for Saturday. They've got Nicky Adjosi up front, who I know for a fact that a certain section of Cov fans are very well versed on his career because of how adamant they were that it was a massive mess up that we didn't sign him in the summer. So that'll be interesting to see the experts. Hopefully they can write into the club to give them an idea of how best to deal with him. He's got 3 goals so far. They've got 4 players on 3 goals. They've got Jonathan Abika and Fabian Robert and a midfielder called Anton Rogers, who have all scored 3, which seems like it's okay. But then the only other player that scored for them full stop is a midfielder called Wes Thomas, who has 2. Looking through their squad, there isn't a great deal of famous names, which is obviously the main thing that we go for. But the other thing that's really apparent is they have an horrendously imbalanced squad. So they seem to have half of their overall makeup of players as strikers, and then no midfielders, and that's that. So there was some talk on their forum, sort of half jokingly, of being worried about the ability that they would have to even put 18 players out as a squad. And given their form and everything else, you'd have to think that we could go into this with a reasonable level of expectation, even just for a 6th clean sheet for Radio Control Car.
Indeed.
So let's have some predictions. Paul, do you want to kick us off?
I'm going to go with 0-0.
You're going to go for another 0-0?
Yeah,
I mean that's where the smart money is, I suppose, isn't it?
I think if one thing we have noticed is you defend with 2 banks of 4 and you defend quite deep. We are, limited in how we break you down, and I would have thought Swindon would just come out for it. They'd be happy with a 0-0, wouldn't they? I mean, you would be in that situation, and it also shows Swindon showed the worry about just relying so much on loans. Didn't have most of their players were loans last season, weren't they?
Yeah, but I don't think that's quite the case this time round from looking at it.
No, that's what I mean. It's sort of, they were in the top 6, top 8 last season with a team full of loans, and those loans were in key positions. Those loans have gone, And you obviously, it's not that easy. We know ourselves. You pick up these loans and you hope they're going to be your best player in your team, and sometimes they are. And once they've gone, they're very difficult to replace. And obviously Swindon, who last season were being praised for their attitude to loans, are obviously suffering by that as well. So, but I'll be happy with a 0-0. Keeps the run going of clean sheets and 0-0 draws.
Neil?
I'd hope sort of a combination of John Fleck returning, Joe Cole having his second game, getting more of a feel for it, a decent looking defence, and obviously the fact that they're going through a bit of turmoil kind of pushes us towards a win. I'm not going to be as mental as I have been. I've been saying 3-0 every week for some reason. I think we can grab a win, something pretty standard like 1-0, I'd say.
Yeah, and I feel like I've copied you a lot recently, but I'm going to have to do it again and say 1-0. I don't think they're going to be capable of taking us apart, because I think of how good we've looked defensively just recently. But I think we'll struggle to smash them all over the place in the way that we would hope, just because of our own attacking deficiencies. But I still think it'll be a win. And that's that. Okay, I think we might be done. Have we got any other business before we wrap up? Obviously, I'll remind everyone to vote for us in the Football Blogging Awards. Get over to footballbloggingawards.co.uk or to @Nii Lamptey Show on Twitter for details of how to vote. Again, thank you very, very much to everyone that has done so. This will be the penultimate time that we do this desperate plea for attention and votes because it closes on the 30th. So, yeah, but like I say, really, really appreciate it. We booked our tickets yesterday to go. That's going to be really exciting. And, so thank you. And then if you want to get in touch with us, it's like I say, you've had the Twitter. Email is niilampteyshow@gmail.com. I think that's everything then. So thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Cheers.
And thank you, listener. Bye.